Did you know that nearly 60% of relationship struggles stem from a lack of patience and understanding? Research shows that couples who actively work on cultivating patience have a 40% higher success rate in maintaining a healthy and lasting bond. When I first read these statistics, they struck a chord with me because, for years, patience felt like an elusive virtue in my relationships. If you've ever felt like love is a battlefield of unmet expectations, constant arguments, or unspoken resentment, you're not alone. I've been there too, and it nearly cost me everything. What you're about to read is the raw and unfiltered story of how I nearly lost the person I loved most because I lacked the patience to let love grow and evolve. It's a deeply personal story of pain, regret, and transformation. After reading this, you'll walk away knowing that change is not only possible, but it's inevitable when you decide to face the hard truths and take action. When it all began, I'll never forget the night it all came crashing down. It was a quiet evening in our small apartment. The sound of rain softly hitting the windows should have felt comforting, but instead, the air between us was thick with tension. My partner and I sat across from each other at the dinner table, the silence so loud it felt deafening. It wasn't always like this. When we first met, everything felt magical, like a whirlwind romance straight out of a movie. But somewhere along the way, the magic started to fade. At first, it was little things, mild irritations over how long they took to text back or frustration when plans didn't go as expected. I brushed it off, thinking these were just normal parts of being in a relationship. But as the months turned into years, the cracks in our foundation grew deeper. I found myself becoming increasingly impatient. I expected them to read my mind, to know exactly what I needed without me having to say it. When they didn't, I'd lash out, often with cutting words I couldn't take back. I'd tell myself if they really loved me, they'd understand me. I became obsessed with immediate gratification, wanting problems solved on the spot and emotions resolved without giving either of us time to breathe. I didn't realize it then, but my impatience wasn't just hurting them, it was hurting me too. One night, after yet another argument about something so trivial I can't even remember what it was, they looked at me with tears in their eyes and said, "I feel like I can never get it right with you. I'm trying, but it's never enough." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted to scream, to argue that they were wrong, that I was the one who felt unseen and unheard. But deep down, I knew they were right. I had been so consumed by my own frustrations that I failed to see their efforts, their love, their patience with me. That night, they walked out the door, and for the first time in our relationship, I didn't know if they were coming back. I remember sitting on the floor of our bedroom, staring at the empty space where their shoes used to be, feeling a kind of loneliness I wouldn't wish on anyone. As I replayed our relationship in my mind, I started to see all the ways I had let impatience sabotage what we had. There was the time I snapped at them for being 5 minutes late to dinner because I didn't understand how stressful their day at work had been. Or the countless times I dismissed their dreams because I thought mine were more important. I realized I had been so focused on what I wasn't getting that I failed to appreciate what I had. It wasn't just about them either. I saw how my impatience seeped into every area of my life. I wanted instant results at work, immediate validation from friends, and overnight success in every endeavor. But love doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. I wish I could say that everything magically got better after that night, but that's not how it happened. The journey to change was slow, painful, and filled with moments of doubt. There were times when I wanted to give up, to fall back into old patterns, because it was easier than facing the uncomfortable truths about myself. But something inside me refused to let go of the hope that I could do better, that I could be better, not just for them, but for myself too. I began to see that patience isn't just about waiting. It's about learning to live in the present, to embrace the messy, imperfect process of love and growth. If you're reading this and you've ever felt like your relationship is hanging by a thread because of impatience, know that you're not alone. The pain you're feeling, the frustration, the self-doubt, it's all part of the journey. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be the end of your story. When I finally took the time to reflect and understand what was holding me back, it changed everything. I began to see love not as a destination, but as a journey, one that requires effort, understanding, and most importantly, patience. And while I can't go back and undo the mistakes I made, I can tell you this: if you're willing to do the work, to face the hard truths about yourself and your relationship, there's hope. There's always hope. After going through this experience, I've come to understand that cultivating patience is not just about learning to wait. It's about shifting your mindset, your habits, and your heart. It's about letting go of control and embracing the uncertainty of love with grace and resilience. The lessons I learned transformed not only my relationship, but my entire perspective on life. If you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure of how to move forward, I want you to know that there's a way out of the pain. You don't have to stay trapped in the cycle of frustration and regret. This story isn't just about me, it's about you too. Because if I can change, so can you. Stay with me. Your transformation is closer than you think. After that pivotal night, loneliness became my constant companion. I'd come home to an empty apartment, and the silence felt heavier than ever. The little things I used to take for granted, hearing their laugh from the other room, the warmth of their hand in mine, even the small disagreements that used to drive me crazy, were now the things I missed the most. Every corner of that apartment held memories. The couch where we used to sit and dream about our future, the kitchen where we'd dance while waiting for the pasta to boil, even the pile of books they left behind, all of it reminded me of what I had lost. I found myself staring at old photos late into the night, replaying happy moments in my head, and wondering where it all went wrong. The guilt was unbearable. I realized how much I had taken for granted, how often I had let impatience rob me of the joy of simply being with them. One night, as I sat on the edge of my bed, I had a realization that shook me to my core. The problem wasn't just my lack of patience with them, it was my lack of patience with myself. I had spent so much of my life chasing perfection, trying to be the perfect partner, the perfect friend, the perfect everything. And when I inevitably fell short, I'd project that frustration onto those closest to me. I didn't know how to give myself grace, and because of that, I couldn't give it to anyone else either. This realization wasn't comforting. In fact, it made me feel even worse at first. It's hard to look in the mirror and see all the ways you've been your own worst enemy. But it was also the first step toward change. Love isn't perfect. It's patient enough to weather the storm. Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized that I had been waiting for love to be easy, to be perfect, to fit neatly into my idea of what it should look like. But love isn't any of those things. Love is messy and complicated and sometimes unbearably hard. And the only way to truly experience it is to be patient enough to ride out the storms. From that moment on, I decided to take a hard look at myself. I started journaling, pouring out all the feelings I had bottled up for years. I forced myself to sit with the discomfort of my own flaws instead of running from them. There were days when it felt impossible. Days when I wanted to pick up the phone and beg them to come back, even though I knew I wasn't ready yet. But I also started to notice small changes. I became more mindful of my reactions, more aware of the way I spoke to people, and more willing to listen without jumping to conclusions. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But slowly, I began to see glimpses of the person I wanted to be, not just for them, but for myself. Months later, when they finally called, I was terrified. My heart raced as I answered the phone, not knowing what to expect. Their voice was soft, hesitant. They said they had been thinking about me, about us. They said they missed me but needed to know if things could be different this time. It wasn't an easy conversation. We talked for hours, unpacking the hurt and the misunderstandings that had built up over the years. But for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself or prove a point. I just listened. By the end of that conversation, we didn't have all the answers. But we had hope. And sometimes, hope is enough to start again. Looking back, I realized that patience isn't just a skill you use in relationships, it's a way of life. It's about learning to sit with discomfort, to embrace uncertainty, and to trust that love, like all good things, takes time. If you've ever felt like you're on the brink of losing something, or someone, you love because of impatience, I want you to know that it's not too late. The road to change is hard, but it's worth it. I don't share this story to paint myself as a hero, or to pretend that I have it all figured out. I share it because I know how lonely and painful it can feel to be stuck in a cycle of frustration and regret. And I want you to know that there's a way out. This isn't the end of my story. In fact, it's just the beginning. Love is still a journey, and I'm still learning how to walk it with patience and grace. But what I've learned so far has transformed my life in ways I never thought possible. If you're ready to take that first step, know that you're not alone. You have the strength within you to change, to grow, and to create the love you deserve. And I promise you, it's worth every moment of effort. Your story doesn't have to end in heartbreak. It can be a story of hope, healing, and transformation. Let this be your turning point. You're closer than you think. After that pivotal phone call, I knew I couldn't rely on hope alone to rebuild what I had lost. It was clear that if I didn't change, if I didn't truly work on myself, any attempt at reconciliation would only lead us back to the same cycle of impatience and frustration. The thought of losing them forever was enough to make me take a long, hard look at my habits, my mindset, and the way I approached not just relationships, but life itself. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. For the first time in my life, I sought help. The first step was reaching out to a counselor who specialized in relationship dynamics. That was terrifying. Sitting in a room and admitting that I had been the one sabotaging my own happiness felt like a confession I wasn't ready to make, but deep down, I knew it was necessary. The first thing I learned was how to pause. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But for someone like me, always quick to react, quick to judge, quick to expect results, it was the hardest lesson to absorb. My therapist taught me to take a step back in moments of frustration, to stop and breathe before speaking or acting. It wasn't just about avoiding impulsive arguments, but about creating space for empathy to grow. I remember one specific exercise that felt almost silly at first. Every morning, I would write down 3 things I was grateful for, specifically about the relationship I was trying to mend. At first, it was hard. My mind was so used to focusing on what wasn't working that it took real effort to shift my perspective. But over time, I found myself noticing the little things I had overlooked for so long. Another simple step that helped me immensely was setting boundaries, not just with others, but with myself. I had to learn to recognize when I was falling back into old habits of demanding too much, too soon. This meant identifying the triggers that led to my impatience and finding healthier ways to manage them. For me, this often meant stepping away from a conversation to clear my mind or reminding myself that not everything needed to be resolved immediately. One of the hardest parts of this journey was letting go of my need to control everything. I had always believed that if I could just get my partner to do things my way, everything would fall into place. But that mindset was a huge part of the problem. Relationships aren't about control, they're about partnership. To work on this, I had to confront my own fears of vulnerability, of uncertainty, of not being enough. I began practicing mindfulness and meditation, which helped me stay present in the moment rather than worrying about what might happen next. It wasn't easy. My mind would often race with doubts and anxieties, but with time, I learned to acknowledge those thoughts without letting them take over. Support came in many forms, and I realized just how important it is to surround yourself with people who genuinely want to see you grow. My therapist was a crucial part of this journey, but so were my friends. I reached out to those who had been through similar struggles, and their encouragement helped me see that change was possible. I also turned to resources that offered practical advice and actionable steps. Books, articles, and podcasts became my lifeline during the toughest days. One piece of advice that stood out to me was the concept of active patience, the idea that patience isn't passive, but a conscious choice to remain engaged and committed even when things are difficult. I learned that patience is like a muscle. It needs to be exercised and strengthened over time. Small, consistent efforts are what lead to lasting change. When my partner and I finally decided to give things another try, it wasn't a magical moment where everything suddenly felt perfect. It was a cautious, tentative process. We had to rebuild trust, not just with each other, but within ourselves. I focused on showing, not just telling, that I was willing to change. This meant listening more than I spoke, giving them the space they needed, and being honest about my own struggles. I stopped expecting instant forgiveness or immediate progress. Instead, I learned to celebrate the small victories, like a conversation that didn't end in frustration, or a moment of connection that reminded us why we fell in love in the first place. As the weeks turned into months, I began to notice a profound shift in my mindset. Patience became more than just a skill I was practicing, it became a core part of who I was. I found myself approaching not just my relationship but every aspect of my life with more grace and understanding. I started to see challenges as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles to overcome. I became more present, more grounded, and more attuned to the needs of those around me. And perhaps most importantly, I learned to be patient with myself. The transformation wasn't just internal. My partner noticed it too. They began to trust me again, to open up in ways they hadn't in years. We started building a new foundation, one that was stronger and more resilient because it was rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Looking back, I can honestly say that this journey has been one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. It wasn't just about saving my relationship, it was about becoming the kind of person who could truly thrive in love. If you're struggling with impatience in your own relationships, know that it's never too late to change. The journey won't be easy, but every step you take will bring you closer to the love and connection you deserve. Through this process, one resource stood out above all others: Embracing Love's Journey, How to Cultivate Patience in Relationships. This book wasn't just another self-help guide. It was a transformative tool that provided me with the insights, strategies, and encouragement I needed to overcome my struggles. The expert advice and actionable steps in this book helped me see my relationship in a completely new light. It taught me how to break free from old habits, build a foundation of trust, and embrace the beautiful, messy process of love with patience and grace. If you're ready to transform your own life and relationships, I can't recommend this book enough. It's not just about theory, it's about real, practical advice that works. You can grab a digital copy today at libriffy.com. Don't wait another day to start your journey toward the love and connection you deserve. Everything you need to make that change is waiting for you in this book. After immersing myself in the lessons and practices I had learned, both from therapy and from Embracing Love's Journey, How to Cultivate Patience in Relationships, my life began to take on a new rhythm. There was a calmness I hadn't felt in years, a sense of control that came not from trying to manage everything around me, but from finding balance within myself. My relationship didn't just recover, it evolved into something deeper, more meaningful. But the surprising part was how the lessons I learned about patience and love spilled over into every part of my life. As my partner and I worked together to rebuild our relationship, we created new rituals that brought us closer. Sunday evenings became our time to reflect on the week, what went well, what we could improve, and how we could better support each other. This simple practice created a safe space for us to communicate openly, without judgment or defensiveness. We also set clear boundaries to protect the time and energy we dedicated to each other. That meant no distractions during date nights, no multitasking during important conversations, and no avoiding tough topics. By being intentional about our time together, we slowly but surely rebuilt the trust and intimacy we had lost. But even as we rebuilt, there were moments of doubt. There were days when I felt like I wasn't doing enough, or when old habits threatened to creep back in. During those moments, I turned to the tools I had gained from the book and other resources. One of the most powerful techniques I learned was how to reframe frustration as an opportunity for growth. Instead of seeing disagreements as signs of incompatibility, I began to view them as moments to better understand my partner and myself. I remember a particular argument we had about something as trivial as where to go for dinner. In the past, this would have escalated into a full-blown fight, with both of us digging our heels in and refusing to back down. But this time, I paused. I took a deep breath and asked myself what was really bothering me. It wasn't about dinner. It was about feeling unheard, about wanting to feel like my opinions mattered. When I finally expressed that, not in anger, but in vulnerability, it completely changed the tone of the conversation. My partner responded with empathy instead of defensiveness, and we found a compromise that left us both feeling valued. What surprised me the most was how these changes in my mindset and behavior started to ripple outward. My relationships with friends and family became stronger as I approached them with more patience and understanding. At work, I stopped expecting perfection from myself and my team. Instead of reacting impulsively when things didn't go as planned, I learned to step back, evaluate the situation, and respond thoughtfully. This not only reduced my stress levels but also made me a more effective leader. Even in moments of personal struggle, like dealing with setbacks or unmet goals, I found myself approaching challenges with a new sense of resilience. I stopped seeing patience as something passive and started recognizing it as an active, powerful force that could help me navigate life's uncertainties. The most beautiful part of this transformation was how it inspired those around me. My partner often commented on how much calmer and more grounded I seemed, and their own behavior started to shift in response. Friends began to notice the change too, often asking me how I managed to stay so composed in situations that would have rattled me before. The truth is, patience isn't just about waiting, it's about being present, being open, and being willing to embrace the journey rather than rushing toward the destination. This mindset has become the cornerstone of my life, and it's something I now carry with me in everything I do. If you're struggling with impatience in your own relationships or life, I want you to know that change is possible. You don't have to stay stuck in a cycle of frustration, resentment, or regret. The journey to cultivating patience isn't easy, but it's worth every moment of effort. Think about the relationships in your life, the ones that matter most. Imagine what it would feel like to approach them with a sense of calm, understanding, and trust. Imagine being able to navigate conflicts without fear, to communicate without defensiveness, and to love without conditions. This isn't just a dream. It's a reality that's within your reach. But it starts with taking that first step. For me, that first step was finding Embracing Love's Journey: How to Cultivate Patience in Relationships. This book isn't just another self-help guide, it's a life-changing resource filled with practical advice, expert insights, and actionable strategies that help me transform my mindset and my relationships. The lessons in this book go far beyond surface-level advice. They dig deep into the root causes of impatience and provide a clear roadmap for building stronger, healthier connections with the people you love. If you're ready to take control of your relationships and your life, I can't recommend this book enough. It's not just about learning to be patient, it's about discovering the kind of love and fulfillment you deserve. You can get a digital copy of Embracing Love's Journey: How to Cultivate Patience in Relationships at libraryffy.com. Don't wait. The answers you've been searching for are just a click away. Take the first step today and start transforming your life. You can get a digital copy by clicking the link in the description, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you are the first to know when we drop a new video. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.